Before we get into the video today, everybody at Make Pro Wrestling Majestic again, and I want to extend our heartfelt condolences to the Inoki family after the tragic loss of Antonio Inoki. He was not only a pioneer in Japanese wrestling and in all of professional wrestling, but a great friend of the show that has given me, myself personally, opportunities many of years ago, and those cannot be ignored. Despite this being more of a macabre episode, we would like to dedicate the episode to Inoki and his loved ones. Thank you. Welcome to the 74th edition of Make Pro Wrestling Majestic. Again, I am Tiger Hay.
And I am still your champion, the Gallery of Many Peanuts.
Because you haven't defended it. Anyway, despite the tribute to Antonio Inoki, this is going to be a very heavy episode. So once again, we're going to say this further. If you do not want to hear about murderers, pedophiles, rapists, racists, recommend don't watch this video or listen to the audio of this podcast.
No, just don't.
Because
huge disclaimer at the beginning.
Yes, because this one is going to be a lot heavier than the previous one
as
well. So, we're talking about controversial wrestlers,
Yes.
not characters, the actual people.
The people behind the characters.
Right, so I had 5, Peanut Gallery had 5, and we kind of have breakdowns of each of them. So let's start off with Peanut Gallery. I assigned you a few of them.
Yes.
And we're going to obviously go first with Grizzly Smith.
Now, there is an entire episode of Dark Side of the Ring on Grizzly Smith, so if you have not watched it, I do recommend watching it. But the TLDR of it is that he was alleged to have done child abuse, rape, and child exploitation. So he did a lot of bad things to his children, one of them being Jake the Snake Roberts, and we kind of know, he did a tell-all on that through Dark Side of the Ring. So he was very abusive. And he also forced a 13-year-old to marry him after rape caused a pregnancy. So that was an interesting thing that I guess we found that out in the Dark Side of the Ring episode.
So this was not the only time as well. There are stories on the road where he would he would basically tell the parents to have the girl with him to go to like a certain this or a certain that, and he ended up raping them.
Right.
That's been told 1,000 times throughout the years of how bad this guy was. And just, you can't talk about controversial wrestlers without bringing up Grizzly Smith.
Yeah, he was a bad dude.
Like, absolutely. And he really didn't have like much of a career. It really didn't go.
He wasn't really influential in the wrestling world. He was just a very controversial bad.
He made a living at it, and he was really more of like in Oregon and Washington. He was very much a territory guy.
Yep. Next one here is Dick Murdoch. Now this guy was allegedly a member of the Ku Klux Klan. And he has come out many times denying that he was a part of the organization. But he also backed that up with certain remarks. A very famous example of which being an altercation that he had with Rocky Johnson.
Yes.
Where he essentially said racist, slanderous sorts of things. And this was back in an era where blacks and people of color were not as influential in the wrestling community either.
Right. I mean, Rocky Johnson was very influential even with his color, but it wasn't as like cookie cutter, or it wasn't like as prevalent as it is now.
Right.
This is a much different era. This is,
70s, 80s. Yes.
A couple of other stories that I really liked is when Tony Atlas was taken with Dick Murdoch to a KKK rally.
Oh, yes.
With him not saying anything.
Right, and he didn't even know it was a Ku Klux Klan rally.
Well, supposedly.
Allegedly. But he has denied that he was a part of the Ku Klux Klan many times. And this is,
But it wasn't just It wasn't just Tony Atlas. It wasn't just Rocky Johnson.
Like,
it
he
was
has-
Dusty Rhodes.
right.
It was Junkyard Dog. They all said this. It's like
Right. They have all said that he has said things that were very anti.
let's push that.
Right.
I am a member of the Ku Klux Klan.
Right.
And I'm sorry, when you have multiple stories corroborating it,
Yep.
I'm gonna tend to lean more towards yes.
Yeah.
But once again, it's innocent until proven guilty. If he said over the years no, until I see some hardcore evidence
Right.
proving this, it's still a no.
Right.
But if he was, I think really he's the only one who is kind of out there as being a KKK
Yep.
member as well. So
Yep.
that's why he's on this list.
All right, next one, Fabulous Moolah. Now, of course,
This was a double-edged sword.
This story has also been told many times.
Now, I wanted to bring up Moolah. I mean,
Let's-
go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead and talk about it first because this one's very much double-edged.
Yeah.
with me.
So, So it's not really double-edged sword. She has been involved in multiple things. So, she's essentially been accused of financial and sexual exploitation of superstars that she took under her wing. So a lot of women that she trained or trained with her, she essentially was a pimp for those women. And when she would put them in wrestling matches or take them to certain promotions, she'd get a cut of their earnings, and she'd also tell the women that she had mentored to do whatever the men wants, even if it's just inappropriate stuff, Allegedly.
This is alleged. This is all alleged.
So, yeah, financial and sexual exploitation of the women's wrestlers that she took under her wing. But she also was controversial because she manipulated women's wrestling. And what I mean by that is essentially she was kind of guiding the direction of how women's wrestling occurred. She also would pull out of shows because she wasn't being booked to win. And this is a large part of the reason why she was women's champion, according to WWE records, for so long, was because she refused to lose.
Yes.
So there was that piece of her as well.
But at the same time, women's wrestling was not getting taken seriously because before she took over the booking of women's wrestling, it was controlled by somebody else.
Right.
And I'm going to be talking about that guy for almost the same reasons.
Right.
But we'll get to that when we get to it. But I think Moolah, despite that, women's wrestling would not be where it was without her contributions.
But we're not talking about what she contributed. We're talking about her controversies.
Yeah, but Moolah, it's still a double-edged sword for me. Like, she's controversial, and that's why she's on the list.
Yep.
But it's almost like she's controversial, yet still legendary. She's famous and infamous at the same time. So that's why I was like, I mean, I guess Disneyland doesn't necessarily make up for beating your kid.
Right.
It's a kind of a hard one for me personally.
All right, next one is
Buck Zoomhot.
Yep, Buck Zoomhot. So this is there was only really one incident where he was controversial, and that is where he was charged, and I think this was after his career, if I'm not mistaken, of sexual.
He was there on and off.
Okay, yeah. So he was accused of sexual misconduct involving a minor, namely his daughter. So she got raped by him. And very famously, when he saw that he was going to prison, he actually ran away. He escaped. He escaped police custody, which has added more years onto his life. That's the only incident, and that's kind of where I'm going to leave it. I mean, that's the only thing about Buck Zoomhot. He wasn't very famous wrestler.
No, but you know what's really funny? If you go down to the South, because he wrestled in the Southern Territories, and go up to anybody and ask them, name 3 wrestlers, for some reason, Buck Zoomhot is one of the names that they actually name as a person that is. He was incredibly.
Do you think that this incident has something to do with that, or was this before?
So no, this was way before.
Okay.
Zoomhot was not like super big. He was more of a job guy, but he was very active. I mean, he went for. So there were times where he wrestled in 4 different companies during a weekend. Like he was like match, and he did this constantly during the 70s and 80s.
Yep.
So he was very well known
Yep.
because he's like, oh, it's rock and roll Buck Zoomhot
Right.
there, and that's why I brought it up, despite it really only being one technical incident.
Right.
Also, raping your kid, like, that's gross. Like, come on.
It happens.
It happens.
Well, it does.
Don't worry about it.
Last one, Pat Patterson, and more specifically, Pat Patterson and Terry Garvin, who ran that ring, the underage.
The Ring Boy scandal.
Yeah.
So, can you explain what
let's
happened here?
Yeah. So what happened was allegedly, Pat Patterson was involved in covering up the exploitation of young men, mostly, who were working the ring, who were setting up the ring, taking down the ring. They're called ring boys.
Right.
And what would happen is that Terry would go around doing the deed, and Pat Patterson, given his position within WWF at the time, would just throw it under the rug, literally.
Because Pat Patterson was the one who was instructing the constructing the ring and bringing it down. He was responsible for them doing that. I think there was a referee who was also involved within the Ring Boy scandal.
Yeah.
Because this was really one of the first big WWF controversies.
And most famously, a Barry Orton, who was the son of Uncle.
No, I'm sorry. Barry Orton is the brother of Bob Orton.
Right.
It's Randy Orton's uncle.
Right.
I'm sorry.
So, Randy Orton's uncle Barry was one of those, allegedly,
mm-hmm.
who came out and said that, yes, this is occurring.
There's a great Grapple Vision video about this that breaks it down a lot more. But now, Terry Garvin, it was Terry Garvin. Yeah, it was Terry Garvin.
It was.
Terry Garvin was more so of that, but there were stories of Pat Patterson getting oral sex from ring boys and was ensued and pursued by other legal men. Where if they did not do that, they would be fired. I think there was a announcer in the the late 80s, early 90s that came forward that Pat Patterson specifically said, I was fired because Pat Patterson said if I did not give him oral sex that I would not have a job there anymore.
Right.
So, and the thing was that it was all just alleged. I know Terry was confirmed to have had these issues, which is why, but Pat Patterson's involvement has been questionable.
Yes. But, of course, him being in control, he had to have known something.
Right.
And this was actually called out when Vince McMahon went on Larry King Live. He was called out for this live, obviously, for these exploitations. And that's kind of where it garnered mainstream interest, was that.
Yeah, there were a couple of interview shows. There was actually, I think that was the only interaction where Dave Meltzer and Vince McMahon were in the room on camera, because Dave Meltzer, who was writing for The Observer, was a big part of getting these into the limelight of most wrestling fans.
Yeah. So
they were actually in the room at the same time in like a discussion with Bob Orton and the announcer. I actually watched that. It was really good too. But, Pat Patterson was just kind of put in there. It was like a Shoeless Joe Jackson with the Black Sox scandal. It's like, how involved was he really?
Right.
But I thought that, we're not dragging him through the mud. This is reality.
Right. This happened, and it's going to be a part of his legacy. Right. But that's pretty much all I've got. I mean, we know that he was a gay superstar in the 70s, which is obviously a big deal. It was controversial at the time.
Yeah, that was controversial at the time. I mean, it was
but not as controversial. But I wanted to really talk about the Ring Boy scandal, because I know that's the direction that you had wanted me to go.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, he came out. He was confirmed to come out a lot later, but it was almost like a well-known secret.
Yeah, it was.
During his time in wrestling, because he was with his partner for like 30 years. Like, there was no way nobody knew.
Right.
There's no way.
But that's all I got.
Okay.
Anything, if you want to add anything to this?
No.
I think you want to comment, put a comment down below.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think about those 5. But when we come back, we're going to do the other 5.
My 5.
Yes.
So stay tuned.
All right.
And we are back. So I'm going to be talking about my 5 for the most controversial wrestlers. And this one is more of a recent incident, but I think it's at least now come into light of how bad this guy really was, and that is Hannibal.
Oh, yes.
So Hannibal, wrestler in Canada, he was really one of the first prominent wrestler YouTube channels back in the day. I mean, back in the day, you always go to Hannibal TV for like the shoot interviews other than Wrestle Shoot and all that stuff.
Now, this is the guy that bit, or... This
was the stabbing of the referee.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
The stabbing. There was a stabbing. I thought it was a biting. No, he literally stabbed the referee. But that wasn't the first incident where he was involved in something like that.
No, oh God, no. Actually, there is, this came out later, but there is a track record of this guy going off script and really bludgeoning people and saying, oh, well, that's part of the script, and then assaults and batteries, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But obviously, December 11th, 2021, world-class pro, what's his name? Nicholson, that's his actual name. He basically went off script, stabbed and bit this referee. I think he cut an artery in his head where he had to go to the hospital and get an emergency blood transfusion. He lost so much blood. Now, due to this, WCPW have banned Hannibal from appearing, and he's essentially blackballed from the business.
Yeah.
A big thing that Hannibal did was, and also Hannibal is tested positive for hepatitis C, and he always does hardcore matches.
Right.
Now, the infamous lawsuit between him and Abdullah the Butcher, because Abdullah the Butcher was the one who gave him Hep C, and Hannibal won that lawsuit and won like $2.3 million. Hannibal now is doing his own wrestling, but after this referee incident, there were a couple of other incidents that were pretty much brushed under the rug of him doing something either extremely similar or a lot worse, where he had beef with another wrestler and went out there and did business for himself. So this is not new.
Right.
Just recently, literally in August of 2022, he was arrested for assaulting a woman, and this is his 5th assault on a female, and he is set to be in court in 10 days, October 12th, 2022, for this. So, asshole, nobody hire this guy. He used to be okay, but now he's an ass. So there you go. Now, we talked about the fabulous Moolah and her and like that double-edged sword. And Billy Wolfe is another one of those instances where does it lie? Because some people say that he revolutionized not only women's wrestling, but African Americans in the wrestling business.
Right.
But then also he has had a history of going to business for himself, using his influence to bring down especially Mildred Burke, and then also sexual not sexual assault, but sexual misconduct.
Right. So very much in the same grain as Fabulous Moolah. Where he would use his power and influence to sway the way that things are
now
done.
Billy Wolfe made a pass towards the fabulous Moolah and Mae Young when they were training to be wrestlers, because that was Billy Wolfe's time.
Right.
Billy Wolfe was married to Mildred Burke, and because of their separation, there was a huge controversy between Billy Wolfe, Mildred Burke, and the NWA, where the NWA powers of be at that time sided with Billy Wolfe and basically blackballed women's wrestling until the fabulous Moolah took over.
Right.
So there was that power influence. Now, the sexual misconduct allegations that were brought out, and then also that clear power grab that he did because Mildred filed for divorce.
Right.
Kind of puts him in an asshole territory.
Yeah.
He wasn't a wrestler per se, but he was a booker. He was a trainer. He trained the women's wrestlers. But on the flip side, he really promoted African-American female wrestlers in the South, which was crazy. And they were very, very popular. So you got to look at it of he was a huge contribution to women's wrestling and African Americans getting into business, but at the same time, sexual misconduct, and the clear power grab.
Fun.
So, controversial, definitely. So, this guy, clearly Stone Cold Steve Austin with a beard. His name is Douglas Witten. He really only had one incident, but it's a very heavy-hitting one. He is a self-proclaimed pro wrestler. He claims that he had 50 matches before his arrest, and there is no evidence of that because it was in Texas. So we looked everywhere, couldn't find it, but he's under this because just one day out of nowhere, he went on a killing spree and killed 4 people.
Oh, fun.
And it was his wife, one of his kids, and I think his in-laws, and he stabbed them all. So he is currently facing life in prison without parole, and he was arrested and put in there February 26th, 1999. He is in a prison somewhere in Texas. Doesn't really matter. Guy's an asshole. So this bitch, she wrestled very briefly.
And what's her name?
Her name is Juana Barraza.
Uh-huh.
She is also known as La Dama del Silencio, or the Lady of Silence. Wrestled in the 80s, early 90s. Really never wrestled anywhere big. She wasn't in CMLL. She wasn't in AAA. But she did smaller Mexico territories to make money. But the other way she made money is kind of why she's on this list.
Is she a pimp?
No. So what she did was that she robbed and murdered elderly women.
Oh.
She is one of the most prolific serial killers in all of Mexico. In the history of the country, this is one of the most prolific serial killers.
Well, tough economy.
Right. She was sentenced to 759 years in prison for the killing of 16 elderly women.
Oh my God.
And there is claims that her actual kill count ranges from 42 to 45 elderly women.
Wow.
Yeah. So obviously clear asshole. It's hard to find matches of hers because it was very low tier.
Right.
But she wasn't caught until like 2014.
Wow.
But she started her killing spree in like 1995.
Huh.
So she was very prolific because she stopped killing, they believe, around 2002, 2003.
Interesting.
So very, very fast killer here. So there's that person. And finally, we can't talk about controversial figures in wrestling without talking about Jimmy Salva. Mm-hmm. One of, if not the most prolific child molesters and abusers in British history.
Huh.
Now, the reason that this one is more prominent is because not only was he a pro wrestler in the 50s and 60s, claiming to have had over 100 matches, and I think his last match was against Adrian Street, actually.
Huh.
But he was one of the most prominent people on BBC News and BBC Television. He hosted many shows, and he had a very successful radio show. If you want context of how popular this guy is, think of the British Howard Stern.
Okay.
Like, very prominent, but then
Right.
he expanded into different avenues of media
Right.
because of his popularity, and also he was very flamboyant. Very flamboyant guy. The allegations of his abuses did not come out until 2012. Essentially when he died, actually.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, he passed away on October 3rd, 2012, and that's kind of when the allegations were brought up to light. And the victim count for him is about 450 to 589 young children over the course of his life that have been molested, abused, sexually exploited, and also there is evidence that he might have actually had a pedophile ring that expanded 30 years into, I think, like 2004.
Huh.
So, obviously asshole, but because of his wrestling, you gotta put him on this list. So those are just kind of some controversial people within the world of wrestling.
Yep.
And I would recommend looking up all of these people for further context. There have been other YouTubers and creators who have done very long-form versions of these, and they're all very good, so I recommend doing that. But that's kind of what we have for this episode of Make Pro Wrestling Majestic. Again, Peanut Gallery, what are we doing next week?
Well, next week, we have a doozy. We have 2 pay-per-views, actually. Bound for Glory and Extreme Rules. And we are doing another special Saturday episode. So be on the lookout for that, just because Mothership is going to be in town on Sunday.
Yep, so we'll be busy with that then, so we decided that would be a good idea. But then the week after, we're not going to be having a show. We're going to get right back on the horse after Mothership leaves.
Right.
So if you did enjoy this video, or if you're listening to this, remember to like it, subscribe, or follow wherever you're listening or watching this on. Become a patron at patreon.com/MPWMA. And then hats are going to be released soon. I'm going to be putting that up in the Linktree link as well. We have some coming in, so that's exciting. And as always, be
majestic.